Despite the surge in popularity of electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles are thriving more so than ever before. Two of the most popular hybrid crossovers that are not a Toyota RAV4 are the Honda CR-V Hybrid and the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. So the simple question is, how do these two compare against each other? Well, let's go for a drive and find out. Starting things in the Honda CR-V Hybrid, it is powered by a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, and it's paired with an eCVT, although it's not really a traditional eCVT. But if you're really interested in how this system works, I'm sure that there are some articles or YouTube videos out on the internet. This engine, in conjunction with the electric motors, has a total output of 204 horsepower and 247 pound-feet of torque. From a stop, the CR-V feels very peppy. It doesn't hesitate to get up to speed, nor does it hesitate when you're merging onto a highway or trying to overtake someone on a highway. If you're gentle on the throttle, then you can also set off from a stop without using the engine. However, you will be accelerating at a slower pace, and you will have people behind you tailgating you and wondering why you're moving so slowly. But otherwise, in everyday traffic, whenever you set off from a stop, the engine will be running, and as soon as you reach your desired speed and let off the throttle a little bit, then the engine will shut off for brief periods. The battery in this CR-V and also in the Tucson get recharged by the engine as well as regenerative braking. Both of these crossover SUVs have different levels of regen braking, and they are both adjusted by the steering wheel mounted paddles. However, one system is less complicated to use than the other. So in the Tucson, you have levels 1, 2, and 3 of regenerative braking, and that's pretty straightforward. In the CR-V Hybrid, you also have different levels of regen braking, but as soon as you touch the throttle pedal again in the normal drive mode, then it resets the regen braking to the default, which is very minimal. You have to switch the car into the sport mode or change the gear selector into B in order to lock the regen braking mode. In one of those two modes, you can put your foot on the throttle pedal again, but the regen braking mode will not reset. It'll stay at whatever level you have it at. Now driving the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid, it uses a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which is quite rare to find in a hybrid vehicle. It's also paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission, which is also quite rare to find in a hybrid vehicle. With the aid of the electric motors, this engine produces 231 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. So this Tucson Hybrid is one of the more powerful traditional hybrids that's on sale. Interestingly though, when you first put your foot down on the throttle pedal, it doesn't quite feel as punchy as the Honda CR-V Hybrid. And I think that's because the electric motor in the CR-V has twice as much power as the electric motor in this Tucson. But once the turbocharger spools up, then this Tucson does feel a little bit faster than the CR-V Hybrid. The powertrain behaves the same way as in the CR-V Hybrid, so whenever you set up from a stop, the engine as well as the electric motors provide power to get you up to speed. And then once you are up to speed and you let off the throttle a little bit, the engine shuts off for brief periods. However, because this Tucson uses a traditional automatic transmission, you can actually feel the shifts between gears. It's not rough by any means, but if you pay close attention, you can feel them. Whereas in the CR-V Hybrid, it of course doesn't have any gear changes. That is, unless you put your foot all the way down, then it does imitate virtual gears. In addition, if you switch the car into sport mode and decide to use the paddle shifters to change gears, there is quite a bit of a delay. As for the fuel economy, it's basically the same as in the CR-V Hybrid. This Tucson does get slightly worse city fuel economy, but it does get slightly better highway fuel economy, that is, on paper. In the real world, I've been getting pretty much the exact same fuel economy in both of these crossover hybrid SUVs. And best of all, you can get better than advertised fuel economy with both of them. As I'm sure you can tell by now, the CR-V Hybrid is in the more off-road trim, the Trail Sport, whereas the Tucson is in the more sporty trim, the N-Line. This Honda CR-V though is not exactly an off-road focused SUV. The Trail Sport trim doesn't add any sort of off-road goodies apart from the all-terrain tires. Granted, this particular demo vehicle already had winter tires equipped to it, and it also comes with unique 18-inch wheels. It doesn't have any locking differentials or skid plates or unique off-road drive modes. It even has the same ride height as all the other standard CR-V trims. In fact, it actually has less ground clearance than the Tucson N-Line. So the Trail Sport trim is more of an appearance package rather than a fully fledged off-road trim. By comparison, the Hyundai Tucson N-Line looks the part of a sporty crossover SUV. The body does not have a flat surface anywhere on it. The small roof spoiler has strakes, the exhaust pipes look like they belong on the Civic Type R, and even the red paint stands out in a crowded parking lot. This version of the Tucson is one that you may find yourself looking back at once in a while when you get out of it. In Canada, both crossovers are equipped with standard all-wheel drive. Neither car is particularly enjoyable to drive as they were not designed with sporty driving in mind, despite how sporty the N-Line trim looks on the Tucson. They both have lackluster steering feel, body roll through turns or under heavy braking, and understeer through corners. These are, however, easy to drive on your way to work, or picking up the kids from school, or on a long family road trip. You can also tow a little bit of cargo with these two, as the Tucson Hybrid can tow up to 2,000 pounds, but the CR-V Hybrid can only tow up to 1,500 pounds. Both crossovers provide a comfortable ride, but the Honda CR-V's ride quality is slightly better. The harshness of road bumps is smoothed very well by the suspension. The Tucson's ride felt just a tiny bit firmer, which translated a bit more of the harshness of road imperfections into the seat. As for noises, the Honda has a quieter overall cabin. There's less road, wind, and engine noises intruding into it than the cabin of the Tucson Hybrid. As I mentioned earlier, this CR-V came equipped with snow tires, which are generally louder than all-season tires, which is what the Tucson had, and yet the cabin of the CR-V was still quieter on highways. But if the engines needed to work hard while driving up a steep hill or merging onto a highway, the engine in the Honda made a far worse racket than the engine in the Hyundai. The interiors of these two crossover SUVs couldn't be any different from one another. Here in the Tucson, it has the very contemporary dual screen layout that is made to look like as though it's one single piece. For the 2025 model year update, it did receive new climate controls as well as quick access buttons for the infotainment system. So it now has physical buttons for the home, map, media, setup, and so on, in addition to a volume knob and a tuning knob. Right underneath those, there are two chunky climate control knobs. However, the rest of the climate controls are integrated into a touchscreen. I personally don't like climate controls that are integrated into a touchscreen, but at least with this one, you can just set the climate to auto and then use one of the two big knobs to change the climate temperature. Right underneath that is a large storage compartment for smaller items, and on the center console you have more physical controls for the drive modes, auto hold, downhill assist, and reverse cameras or surround view cameras if equipped. There's also a pretty big wireless phone charging pad as well as two cup holders. But surrounding all these is piano gloss black plastic, and as I'm sure you know, this will not look great after a long period of time because it attracts scratches, dust, fingerprints, and so on. Plus, there's more piano gloss black plastic right here on the door panels, and this is an area where you constantly touch to open and close the doors. So I just wish Hyundai would choose something else other than this gloss black plastic. This being an N-Line trim, it does have a few sporty touches. So the steering wheel is contoured to your hands. There's red stitching across the dashboard as well as the seats, and the seats themselves are mostly upholstered in suede. But when it comes to comfort, I personally find the seats in the CR-V Hybrid to be just a little bit more comfortable for my body type than the ones in this Tucson. And it all has to do with these side bolsters. I feel like these ones just dig into my back a little bit, whereas in the CR-V Hybrid, they're a bit more flat. In terms of interior space, it's about the same as the CR-V. Plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom. However, I do feel like as though I'm sitting just a little bit higher up in this Tucson than in the CR-V, even though this seat is at its lowest position. But either way, I still have just enough headroom. And that's about it for the front seats of the Hyundai Tucson. Now let's go sit in the back. The CR-V Hybrid has always been known as having the most amount of leg space in the second row, but the Hyundai Tucson is almost identical. So behind my 6'4" driving position, my knees are not touching the back of the front seats, which is a good thing because they're made out of hard plastic instead of soft leather. And I also have plenty of space for my feet, even though this seat is at its lowest position. And headroom is a little bit tight, but I can recline these seats and have a little bit more headroom in addition to having a more relaxed reclined position. However, the back doors in this Tucson don't open at almost 90 degrees like how they do in the CR-V Hybrid. So loading stuff in and out or getting in and out of the back seats of the CR-V is just a little bit easier than it is in this Hyundai Tucson. As for the cargo area, again, it is the Honda CR-V that is known to have the most amount of cargo space, but again, the Hyundai Tucson has almost exactly the same amount of cargo space as the Honda CR-V, both with the second row seats up and also when the rear seats are folded. The great thing about this Hyundai Tucson is that you don't really need to go to the side of each door to lower the back seats. They do have releases in the trunk area. Plus, you do get a little bit of storage space right underneath the floor, whereas in the CR-V, you don't. Both of them are also available with power lift gates, and both are unfortunately not available with spare wheels. They both have tire repair kits. Now sitting in the CR-V Hybrid, as I said in the Tucson, it has pretty much the exact same amount of space both here in the front seats and also in the back seats. So up here in the front, plenty of leg space for my 6'4" height and a little bit more headroom than in the Tucson because it does feel like as though I can lower this driver's seat just a little bit more than in the Tucson. In the back behind my tall driving position, same thing as in the Tucson, I have just enough leg space and a tiny bit more headroom. The CR-V also comes equipped with reclining back seats, so you can make yourself a little bit more headroom. The center hump is a little bit shallower in the CR-V compared to the Tucson, and of course the CR-V does have those almost 90-degree opening doors. Back here in the front, the interior design is much more traditional, which is totally fine because the CR-V has very simple and actually quite nice to the touch controls. It doesn't use any sort of capacitive touch or touchscreen controls, and it has far less gloss black plastic than in the Hyundai Tucson. This Trail Sport trim adds orange stitching on the seats as well as the center console armrest and also the gear selector. The seats are upholstered in a basic cloth rather than leather or leatherette, but I think it's totally fine because in the summers they're not burning hot and in the winters they're not ice cold. But one thing that irritates me is that this Trail Sport gets the less advanced version of Honda's infotainment system. So this infotainment does support wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and it works just fine. However, it's quite basic compared to the infotainment system that you find in more top spec trims. But worse still, if you need to change a vehicle setting, you have to use this rotary knob on the right side of the steering wheel. It is very frustrating to navigate through the menu system on the driver instrument cluster using just this little rotary knob. It would have been much easier to integrate the vehicle settings into the main infotainment touchscreen like how they are in the higher spec trims of the Honda CR-V and other Honda vehicles. And I'm not sure why Honda decided to make it this way for the lower end trims. It is very, very annoying. When it comes to pricing, as you would expect, the more expensive is the Honda CR-V Hybrid. But it is available in 4 different trims with the hybrid powertrain: Sport, Trail Sport, EXL, and Touring, whereas the Tucson is only available in this N-Line and also the Ultimate with the hybrid powertrain. But regardless of which one of these trims you choose in the Tucson, Both of them are less expensive than the equivalent CR-V hybrid. So for the higher price tag, that means you get more convenience features in the Honda CR-V, right? Not quite. You actually get the same amount of features as you get in the Hyundai Tucson. So both of these cars have wireless phone charging pads, dual zone automatic climate controls, heated front seats, heated steering wheels, sunroofs, although as you can see in the Hyundai Tucson you get a panoramic sunroof, whereas in the CR-V you get just a standard sunroof. They both also have backup cameras, power driver seat but manually adjustable passenger seat, keyless entry, and push button start. However, neither of them have memory settings for the driver's seat, so if you and your wife share the same vehicle, that does get annoying because you constantly have to change the settings. And also, neither of them have parking sensors in the back. But the Hyundai Tucson does get heated rear seats in the N line, whereas the CR-V hybrid, you have to move up a trim in order to get heated rear seats. So with the Hyundai Tucson, you're getting slightly better value for your money, and it's also less expensive than the CR-V. The 2026 Honda CR-V Hybrid Trail Sport is covered by a 3-year 60,000 kilometer new vehicle and 5-year 100,000 kilometer powertrain warranty, while the hybrid components are covered by an 8-year 160,000 kilometer warranty. This is pretty standard amongst most mainstream vehicles. The 2026 Hyundai Tucson Hybrid, on the other hand, has a longer warranty period. 5 years, 100,000 kilometer new vehicle and powertrain warranty. In the United States, the basic warranty is 5 years or 60,000 miles, and the powertrain warranty is 10 years or 100,000 miles. Two hybrids, two different takes on family SUVs. Which one is better? Well, I'm kind of leaning more towards the Hyundai Tucson. Not only do you get more features for less money, but it's also more powerful, yet still fuel efficient. It's just as spacious as the CR-V, and it comes with a longer warranty period, especially in the United States. The Honda CR-V is not bad, it just doesn't quite have the edge to make it better than the Hyundai Tucson. At least, that's my opinion. What about yours? Which one would you pick? In the meantime, if you would like to know more about either of these two SUVs, I have a more detailed comparison review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car, truck, or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one.